I want you to imagine for a second standing on a street corner. But forget the concrete jungle you know today. Erase the skyscrapers, get rid of the taxis, the steam from the manholes, all of it.
Not even a hot dog stand in sight.
Not a single one. The year is 1702. It's October in New York City. But in 1702, New York, I mean, it's not really a city, is it? Not in our sense. It's more like a town, just sort of clinging to the edge of this vast, dark wilderness.
Absolutely. And the wind. The sources make a big deal about the wind. It's not just a breeze. It's this raw, howling force coming right off the Atlantic. It feels like it could rip the tricorn hat right off your head. And the smell, the smell is the first thing that really hits you.
Right. What are we talking about here?
We are talking about an aggressive sensory experience. It's not car exhaust and stale coffee. It's this pungent, really suffocating cocktail of low tide, of tar from the shipyards, animal fodder everywhere. And, let's be brutally honest here, the contents of chamber pots.
Tossed out the window.
Tossed right out the window into the street. There's no modern plumbing. The streets are basically open sewers until the night soil men come around, and that's a big if. They don't always show up.
And that's the reality we need to start with. It's gritty, it's gross, and it sets the stage perfectly for what we are unpacking today.
Yeah.
We're not just looking at dry history, we're diving into the Mr. Slaughter case files. This is a story about early colonial crime solving and the really messy intersection of law and just basic survival.
And it's about the psychology of fear. We've got a stack of narrative accounts here detailing the exploits of the Herald Agency. You should think of them as, I guess, private detectives before that term really even existed.
A problem solver.
Problem solvers is what they call themselves. And they're operating in a world where the police force is, well, it's barely functional. It's just a handful of constables and a night watch that, frankly, would rather sleep than patrol. The boundary between civilization and total chaos is terrifyingly thin.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty specific. We want to understand how two men, a young problem solver named Matthew Corbett and his mentor, Hudson Greathouse, get themselves locked into a wagon with a serial killer who is, arguably, smarter than both of them put together.
And to do that, we have to look at the economics of 1702, the moral rot of slavery, which underpins so much of this, and the heavy, heavy burden of keeping secrets.
Because the antagonist, this Tyranthus Slaughter, he preys on all of that.
Exactly. But before we get to the monster in the wagon, we have to understand the men who were foolish enough to try and transport him. Because if you don't understand their desperation, their financial and moral pressures, you can't possibly understand the brilliance of the trap they walk right into.
Okay, so let's start with the celebrity of the group, Matthew Corbett. The documents describe him as 23 years old, a former magistrate's clerk who's now a problem solver. And apparently he's famous. Like actually famous in this mud-soaked version of New York.
Famous is a really tricky word here. For Matthew, it's a total double-edged sword. He got all this notoriety from a previous case, the one involving the Queen of Bedlam, and a killer they called the Masker. But if you look closely at the notes, his fame is largely, well, it's manufactured. It's being driven by these sensationalist broadsheets called the Earwig.
The Earwig? That sounds like a tabloid.
That is exactly what it is. It's written and printed by a guy named Marmaduke Grigsby. And Grigsby is the 18th century equivalent of a clickbait artist. He's taken Matthew's very real, very traumatic experiences and spun them into these heroic, serialized adventure stories.
So he's embellishing.
He's embellishing, he's exaggerating, he's probably making half of it up. So Matthew walks down the street and people are, thrusting ink pots at him, wanting autographs on these stories that are basically fiction. They see him as this knight of justice, this hero. But the reality is he's just a young man trying not to have nightmares about what he's lived through.
That has to do something to a 23-year-old's ego, though. The accounts mention he's become obsessed with his appearance now. He's not wearing the simple clerk's wool anymore.
No, not at all. He's got this new black suit with gray stripes, these new boots that are polished to a mirror shine. The text says he's practically preening. He's trying to project an image.
The image of a gentleman of importance.
Exactly. In 1702, your clothes were your resume. They were your credit score. If you looked wealthy, people assumed you were trustworthy, that you were capable. But this is where the source material gets so interesting. If you look at the financial realities, it's a complete facade. Matthew is drowning in debt. He owes the tailor, a man named Benjamin Owls, for that fancy suit. He owes for the polished boots. He's living in a refurbished dairy house that he can barely afford to heat. He's projecting success, But he is one bad week away from total ruin.
Which is, I mean, it's weirdly relatable, isn't it? How many people today are living on credit just to look the part for their job?
It's a timeless struggle. But there's something darker than just debt hanging over him. The sources refer to a darkness or a shadow on his mind. It's more than just financial stress.
Right, the death threat.
The death threat, it's the psychological toll of his work.
Yeah.
He received a simple card with a single bloody fingerprint pressed onto it, nothing else. And it's from a criminal mastermind known only as Professor Fell.
Professor Fell, we see that name pop up a few times in the margins. He's the big shark in this pond, right?
He's the apex predator, the Moriarty of the colonies. His criminal empire is vast and unseen. Matthew disrupted one of Fell's operations in a previous case, and now he's living with this silent, constant promise of retaliation. It's pure psychological warfare.
So every day he wakes up wondering if today's the day.
Exactly. Is the assassin waiting in the alley? Is the delivery boy actually a killer? Every shadow in that cold dairy house looks like a threat. So you've got this protagonist who is vain, deeply in debt, and profoundly paranoid. A real mess.
And then you have his partner, Hudson Greathouse. The contrast is stark.
The contrast couldn't be sharper. If Matthew is the lockpick, intellectual, detail-oriented, a bit neurotic, Greathouse is the hammer. He is the brute force instrument. He's 47 years old, stands 6'3", which is gigantic for that era, and he's built like a siege engine.
And the descriptions of him are visceral. The scars.
Oh, yeah. He's scarred on his face, scarred on his torso. He is a man who has survived a lifetime of violence by simply being better at it than everyone else. He's the classic tough mentor archetype, but there's a real edge to him. He isn't just grumpy, he's deeply cynical.
You get the sense he's seen the worst of humanity and expects nothing better.
He has to be that way. He's training Matthew, and he knows this world is lethal. He is hard on the kid because a moment of softness could get Matthew killed. Great house fights with a mix of brute force and psychological intimidation. When he walks into a room, the whole dynamic shifts. Loud men get quiet, they look at the floor. He occupies space in a way Matthew hasn't learned yet.
But like Matthew, he's also broke.
He's also broke. The Herald Agency isn't bringing in enough money to sustain them. He has the skills, he has the muscle, but he can't pay the bills. And he needs that intimidation factor because of where this whole story kicks off. He drags Matthew to a place called the Cockatail Tavern.
Now, based on the description, this isn't a place for a quiet pint and a chat.
Far from it. This is a dive bar on Wall Street, but dive is probably too polite a word. The owner, Lionel Skelly, keeps a hatchet behind the bar.
Yeah, hatchet.
And he's used it. The lore is he cut off a patron's hand in a dispute. The air in there is thick with pipe smoke and the smell of something called apple destruction.
Apple destruction. What is that?
It's the local slang for the cheap, potent brandy they serve. It gives you a sense of the clientele, right? They aren't drinking for the flavor, they are drinking for oblivion. But the most telling detail, the one that paints the whole picture, is the front window.
It's boarded up.
It's boarded up, not because of the wind or a bad storm. It's boarded up because patrons keep getting thrown through it. It's a recurring expense.
That is such a vivid image. It suggests this level of casual accepted violence that we can't really fathom. So Greathouse brings his celebrity partner into this den of vipers. Why? They're not there for the apple destruction.
No, it's a test, a field test. Greathouse is looking for a third man. He knows Matthew is a target for Professor Fell. He knows Matthew needs a bodyguard, someone who is more than just a brawler, someone with real skill, and he has his eye on a man named Zed.
Zed. Let's talk about Zed, because the way he's introduced is, well, it's unconventional, to say the least. Greathouse basically picks a fight with the entire bar just to see what Zed will do.
It is a calculated tactical provocation. He walks in and immediately starts insulting the regulars. Specifically, he targets a brute named Bonehead Boskins. What a great name, by the way.
Fantastic name.
And another tough guy named Samuel Bader. He deliberately stirs up a hornet's nest because he wants to see how Zed handles the swarm. He wants to know if Zed has the discipline of a warrior or if he's just another wild animal who will panic when the fists start flying.
And Zed is, at this point, enslaved. Correct.
Yeah.
Who does he belong to?
Yes. He is the property of the town coroner, a man named Ashton McCaggers. Zed is a massive figure, an African man with ritual scars on his face in the shapes of a Z, an E, and a D. That's how he got the name Zed.
Because he can't tell them his real name.
He can't speak at all. He's mute. His tongue was severed years ago. But Greathouse, who has traveled the world, has identified him. He believes Zed is a Ga warrior.
A Ga warrior. What does that imply in this context? What's the significance?
The Ga people are from the coast of what is now modern-day Ghana. They have a long and respected history of martial prowess. Greathouse suspects Zed isn't just a laborer. He thinks Zed is a sleeper agent of pure combat skill. A trained, elite fighter who was likely captured through treachery, not in open battle. It brings up this incredibly tragic backstory. A man of high status and skill in his own land, reduced to a mute servant in this cold, alien city.
And Greathouse's theory holds up. When the fight breaks out at the Cockatiel, and it was always going now, Zed doesn't just panic and start swinging, he goes to work.
It is described as the efficiency of violence. It's not chaotic brawling. The narrative shows him ripping a chain and a lantern from the ceiling to use as a weapon, disarming Skelly, the owner, before he can get to his hatchet. He uses the environment. He catches a heavy mug thrown at his head and, in one fluid motion, returns it with enough force to knock the man out cold.
But the defining moment is with Bonehead Boskins.
Right. Boskins is the big boss of the tavern. He puts on brass knuckles, a widowmaker, they call it, and takes a swing at Zed's head.
And Zed just isn't there.
He's not there.
Mhm.
He dodges with this incredible, almost supernatural speed. He grabs Boskins, uses the man's own momentum to spin him around, and then heaves him through that boarded-up window we mentioned.
The fenestration by water.
It's the ultimate power move. It effectively clears the room. Everyone just stops. It's not just about strength. It was about leverage, timing, and this incredible spatial awareness. Greathouse got his answer. Zed is the real deal.
But there's a moment right after the violence that I found really, really arresting. It stops the action cold, the fight is over, it's raining outside, the crowd is angry and confused, and Zed makes a sound.
The cry, it's such a powerful moment in the text. Since he has no time, he can't form words, but he lets out this sound. And it starts as this deep, bull-like roar of adrenaline and rage from the fight. But then it transitions. It changes pitch and becomes the sound of a child's cry.
A sound of pure misery.
And it silences the entire mob. The sheer, articulate sound of human suffering cuts through all the anger and violence. It reminds everyone, Matthew, Greathouse, the reader, you, that despite his terrifying physical power, Zed is a man trapped in a horrific situation. He's a prisoner, he's far from home, he's been mutilated, and he's just been used as a test subject in a bar fight. It just cuts right through the machismo of the scene and reveals the deep, underlying tragedy.
And that human element is clearly what drives Greathouse's next move. He decides then and there he has to hire Zed. But not just hire him, he wants to buy him.
To free him. It's an important distinction. Greathouse claims owning people is against his religion, which is a really rare and progressive moral stance for 1702. But on a practical level, he needs Zed to watch Matthew's back. He knows the threat from Professor Fell is real. The problem, as it always is in these stories, is money.
The economics of freedom in 1702 are just. They're brutal.
They are specific and they are prohibitively high. Corner McCaggers, Zed's current owner, doesn't even own him outright. Zed is under contract. He's scheduled to be sold to a wealthy and notoriously cruel shipbuilder named Van Couwenhoven in 4 years.
So it's not a simple purchase.
Not at all. To buy out that contract and then on top of that bribe the governor, Lord Cornbury, who was famously corrupt, for something called a writ of manumission, which are essentially freedom papers, the total cost would be over £30.
£30. Can you contextualize that for us?
Yeah.
What does that mean in 1702?
It's an astronomical sum for a working man. To give you some idea, a skilled tradesman, like a carpenter or blacksmith, might earn a few pounds a year after their expenses. Greathouse has maybe £10 to his name if he liquidates everything he owns. Matthew, as we know, is in debt. £30 is the price of a small house with a plot of land. It's a fortune.
So they hit a financial brick wall immediately.
A huge one. And this financial desperation, this specific need for £30, becomes the engine that drives the rest of the story. They have a moral imperative to save Zed from this cruel shipbuilder and a practical imperative to protect Matthew, but they're completely hopelessly broke.
And while they're stressing over every penny, the narrative gives us two other discoveries that just deepen the whole mystery and the sense of unease. The first is Zed's art.
Right. Back in McCagger's attic, which is this museum of death filled with skeletons and jars of preserved organs, they find charcoal drawings that Zed has made.
These aren't pretty landscapes of the harbor, are they?
No. They're profoundly disturbing. He draws New York, but he makes it look alien and hostile. The buildings are sharp and threatening, with black, greasy lines spouting from the chimneys like venom. And he draws fish, specifically monsters. Fish with thorns, fish with disturbingly human qualities.
What do you make of that?
I think it's a window into his trauma. It's how he's processing his world. He sees the colony as a place of monsters. The drawings reflect how he views the people around him. Monstrous, thorny, dangerous. He's an artist trying to document a nightmare.
Which is a perfect segue to the actual, well, the actual monster part. The monster's tooth. This was such a weird, almost random detail in the case files.
It's weird, but it's thematically crucial. It sets the atmospheric tone for what's coming. McCaggers, the coroner, shows them his greatest treasure. It's this massive, blade-like tooth, 5 inches long. It was found 60 feet underground in a coal mine back in Somerset, England.
So it's a fossil.
We would call it a fossil, yes. A megalodon tooth, probably. But to McCaggers, it's proof of biblical monsters. He thinks it belongs to a leviathan or a behemoth.
And Greathouse just laughs it off. He calls it a tent stake.
He mocks it outwardly, yes. He's a pragmatist. But later, the notes reveal he has a nightmare about it. He dreams of a black iron monster as big as a church with a mouthful of those teeth hunting him down. It represents this deep-seated fear of the unknown.
The things buried beneath the earth.
Exactly. 1702 is a time when science is just starting to peek at the fossil record, but to most people it's just dragons. It suggests there are forces in the world so big and ancient that human strength, even Hudson Greathouse's strength, is completely meaningless. It's a perfect bit of foreshadowing for the arrival of a different, more modern kind of monster in the narrative.
So you have nightmares about ancient monsters, and then you have Matthew, who's dealing with his own, much more recent ghosts. He decides to ride back to the scene of his trauma, the Chapel estate. This is where he almost died in the previous case.
He tells himself he's going there to investigate. He has this nagging professional question. How did the villains escape a police cordon? And to his credit, his detective instincts are sharp. He finds a hidden escape tunnel in a gully near the estate. He proves that the police were incompetent, and his theory was right.
But that's not the real discovery, is it?
No. The real discovery happens inside the ruined library of the estate. The house has been ransacked by looters, but they left the books. Because, well, most looters in 1702 couldn't read and didn't see any value in a pile of paper.
An oversight on their part. Matthew climbs a ladder and finds one specific book titled The History of Locks.
Which, with a beautiful sense of irony, is a hollowed-out book that's actually a locked box. Matthew, being the clever problem solver, deduces that the key must be hidden nearby in a related book. He finds it tucked inside another volume, The Lesser Key of Solomon,
Which is a famous grimoire on demonology.
a book about summoning and controlling demons. The symbolism is thick, isn't it? He's literally opening a demonic text to find a key. He opens the box, and inside is a black leather bag sealed with red wax. And the seal is an octopus.
The symbol of Professor Fell.
The octopus, with its tentacles reaching everywhere, Matthew breaks the seal, and inside, he finds gold. Stacks of 5 guinea pieces, 80 pounds worth of gold.
Wait, 80 pounds. They needed 30 to save Zed.
Exactly. He is holding nearly triple what they need. It is life-altering, problem-solving money. It's enough to clear his debts to the tailor, fix his drafty dairy house, buy Zed's freedom, and still have a hefty cushion to operate the agency for a year or more.
So, problem solved, right? They're rich.
You would think. But this is the pivot point for Matthew's character in this entire arc. This is the moment everything changes. He doesn't tell anyone. He takes the money, rides home in the dark, hides the heavy bag in his straw mattress, and keeps his mouth shut. Not a word to Greathouse.
Why? I mean, is he just being greedy?
It's more complex than that. We have to really analyze his headspace. Is there greed? Yes, absolutely. He likes the idea of being a wealthy gentleman, of having a safety net, but there is also a huge amount of fear. This is Professor Fell's money. It is blood money. If he starts flashing it around New York, paying off debts, buying a man's freedom, does he invite the assassin? Does the octopus come looking for its missing gold?
That's a valid fear.
It is. And then there's his relationship with Greathouse. Greathouse is impulsive and single-minded. Matthew likely fears that if he reveals the money, Greathouse will immediately take all of it for the agency or spend every last coin on Zed, leaving Matthew still in debt and vulnerable. By hiding it, Matthew gets to be in control of his own destiny for the first time.
But that's secrecy. It's a poison, isn't it? He's hoarding the solution while his partner is panicking about the problem.
And that panic, that desperation on Greathouse's part, leads them directly into the jaws of the beast. Because Greathouse doesn't know about the gold in the mattress, he is desperate for any paying job. So when the High Constable, a man named Gardner Lowellhorn, offers them one, Greathouse takes it without a second thought, even though it's a terrible, demeaning job.
This is the transfer job.
This is the transfer job. They are ordered to go to a New Jersey asylum, pick up a lunatic criminal, and transport him back to New York, where he'll be put on a ship to England. The pay is £5 total.
£5.
Wow.
A pittance. It's almost an insult, especially when we, the audience, know that Matthew is literally sleeping on £80.
It's scrap money. But to Greathouse, it is £5 closer to saving Zed. It's a step. If he knew about the mattress gold, they would have told Littlehorn to shove it. They would never, ever have taken this job, and they never would have met Tyranthus Slaughter.
Let's talk about the man himself, Mr. Slaughter. The name alone sounds like something out of a penny, dreadful. But the description of him is unsettlingly real.
He is a walking study in contradictions. When they first meet him at the asylum, he's in this dark, filthy cell. He hasn't bathed in months. He has what the text calls a patchwork beard, these weird tufts of gray, red, and black hair growing wild on his face. He smells apparently like a swamp, but then he speaks.
And his voice.
His voice is the refined, articulate, calm voice of a high society gentleman. The disconnect between the visual filth and the auditory elegance is profoundly creepy.
It's designed to unnerve you from the start.
Completely, and he insists on being called Mr. Slaughter. His former name was Todd Carter. He was a barber. He's accused of murdering 11 men and a child and burying them in the dirt floor under his cellar. On top of that, he also seduced and killed wealthy women for their fortunes.
So he's a predator of every kind.
He is the Hannibal Lecter of the colonial era. He genuinely believes he is intellectually and morally superior to everyone around him. And there's this moment at the asylum that really demonstrates his particular brand of cruelty. A patient named Jacob, who has a severe head injury, comes up to Greathouse and Matthew and asks them, "Have you come to take me home?"
And the asylum doctors usually just distract him, right? They give him a comforting lie to calm him down.
Right, keep him placid. But Slaughter, from his cell, looks Jacob right in the eye and says effectively, "No one is coming to take you home. Your family has forgotten you. You will die in this place."
That's just unnecessarily cruel. Horrible.
Slaughter frames it as an act of kindness. He tells Matthew later that he was freeing Jacob from the poison of false hope. He says he hopes that, with this new clarity, Jacob will now have the courage to go hang himself. This establishes Slaughter's entire worldview. He believes he is an agent of brutal truth in a world of comfortable liars. He destroys people psychologically long before he ever touches them physically. He keels back the polite lies of society and forces people to look at the ugly, unvarnished reality underneath.
So, against their better judgment, Matthew and Greathouse load this man into a wagon. He's shackled hand and foot. He's got a 20-pound iron ball chained to his leg. They have a pistol. It should be a standard, if unpleasant, prisoner transport.
It should be. But Slaughter begins his psychological siege immediately. He just watches them. He reads them. Within minutes, he has their roles deduced. Matthew is the ambitious, vain lawyer type. Greathouse is the stolid, unimaginative soldier muscle, and he starts picking at their insecurities. Then he moves on to physical intimidation.
The fly scene. We have to break down the fly scene because it's so skin-crawling.
It's disgusting, but it's a brilliant piece of character work. Slaughter is in the back of the wagon, feigning sleep. A big, fat fly lands on his face. It crawls over his lips. He doesn't twitch a muscle. Then, in a motion too fast to really see, his lips purse, and he sucks the fly into his mouth.
And eats it.
He crunches it. Loudly enough for Matthew to hear from the driver's seat. It is a primal display of dominance. He's saying, "I am a predator. I am so still and so fast that I could snatch a fly out of the air while in chains. Imagine what I could do to you."
It rattles Matthew to his core. It proves that his reflexes are superhuman. It creates this unbearable tension that even though he is chained, he is coiled and dangerous.
And once he has them thoroughly rattled, he dangles the bait.
The offer. Slaughter claims that during his time as a highwayman, he and his partner buried a fortune, a safe box containing 50 pounds in coin, plus a small fortune in jewelry.
50 pounds. More than enough for Zed. More than enough. Plus jewelry. So maybe 100 pounds total value. He says it's buried at the end of a little used forest track near the river, and he offers the location to them in exchange for his freedom. "Take me there," he says, "dig up the gold, and let me walk away."
Now, Greathouse. He wants that money for Zed more than anything.
Desperately. The text says Greathouse pulls the wagon over. He gets out and walks into the woods to think. He comes back and asks Matthew, his expert on liars, is he lying? But Greathouse has already convinced himself he thinks he can con the con man.
A fatal mistake.
The fatal mistake. He hatches this plan. They'll drive down the track, make Slaughter, show them where the gold is, dig it up, and then just put him back in chains and continue to New York. He thinks he can outsmart the devil. He thinks his physical strength and the pistol in his belt are enough to control the situation.
And here is the absolute tragedy of the moment.
Yeah.
Matthew is sitting right there, knowing he has 80 pounds of gold hidden in his mattress back home. He doesn't need Slaughter's 50 pounds of blood money. He could end this entire charade right now.
This is the paralysis of the secret. If Matthew speaks up now, in this moment, he has to explain everything. He has to admit he found the gold. He has to admit he's been hoarding the solution where Greathouse has been agonizing over how to save Zed. He has to admit he didn't trust his partner, and in his fear and his pride, he can't do it. So he stays silent.
And his secret becomes a lie of omission.
And because of that silence, Greathouse tells him to turn the wagon. And they turn down the forest track.
Into the woods, and as luck would have it, into a storm.
A violent, brutal autumn storm hits. The sky turns the color of lead. The wind starts screaming through the trees. It's chaotic. At one point, a huge gust of wind blows Matthew's prized tricorn hat, that symbol of his new gentlemanly status,
right off his head.
and Slaughter catches it. With manacled hands, in the back of a bouncing wagon in the middle of a gale, he plucks it right out of the air, and he leans forward and forces it back into Matthew's hand. It's this shocking physical violation of personal space. It demonstrates that his chains are an inconvenience, not a total restraint, and he whispers something like, "You wouldn't want to lose such a fine hat, sir."
It's menacing. He is literally handling Matthew's vanity. He's saying, I see you, I know what you value, and I can take what is yours whenever I want.
The storm gets worse. It forces them off the road. They can't find the fort that Slaughter promised them was at the end of the track. Instead, they end up in this mud-soaked, completely abandoned village.
New Unity, what a name.
An ironic one. It's a ghost town. There's a leaning church, a cemetery, rotting cabins. It's the middle of nowhere, but there's one light. In the distance, a single candle flickers in one cabin window. One cabin is occupied.
And that's where we leave them, in this part of the narrative, isn't it? Stranded, in a hurricane-force rainstorm with a serial killer who knows they're greedy enough to go off-road for treasure, and an innocent civilian is about to open the door to them.
It is the perfect trap. And what's brilliant is that Slaughter hasn't picked a single lock or broken a single chain yet. He didn't need to. He used Greathouse's noble desperation and Matthew's selfish fear to drive them exactly where he wanted them. He has isolated his captors from society, from the law, and from any hope of backup. He turned the very geography against them.
It is amazing how completely the dynamic has shifted. At the start of the day, Greathouse and Matthew are the professionals, the problem solvers in control. By the time they knock on that cabin door, they are bickering, compromised, and being led by the nose by their own prisoner.
And that is the core theme that emerges here. In this world, the so-called good guys are deeply compromised. They're compromised by debt, by secrets, by vanity, by the simple grinding need for money. Matthew's secrecy weakened him. Greathouse's cynical practicality made him vulnerable to the bribe. Slaughter, the bad guy, operates with this terrifying clarity and purpose. He told them time was running out. He told them he wanted to escape. He never really lied about his ultimate intentions, just the method.
So what's the big takeaway here? Beyond the obvious, don't get in a wagon with a serial killer.
I think it raises a really potent question about the cost of secrets. Matthew's secret, that 80 pounds, it felt like a safety net to him. It felt like power. But in reality, it became an anchor that dragged them all into this deadly mess. If he had just trusted his partner, they would be safe and warm back in New York. Instead, they're lost in the dark with a monster.
And that monster is just patiently waiting for the right moment to stop playing games.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder, when does a secret become a lie? And what price are you willing to pay for a feeling of safety?
And perhaps the more chilling thought is this. When you stare into the eyes of a monster like Tyranthus Slaughter, are you seeing something alien and evil? Or are you just seeing a distorted reflection of your own compromises, your own greed, and your own secrets?
That is the thought to keep you up at night. We'll be back next time to find out if they, and whoever is in that cabin, survive the night in New Unity. Until then, keep your candles lit.
And maybe check your mattresses, just in case.